DNVR is here at Ball Arena with the GM of the Colorado Avalanche, Chris MacFarland, celebrating the legacy of the Avalanche, but also that GM position with people like Pierre Lacroix in that history. First of all, Chris, thank you for joining us. We have Nick Gismondi, Nathan Rudolph here. It's kind of big shoes to fill. There's only ever 32 GMs in the NHL. What's it like being part of the Avalanche organization and the legacy the GM position has here?
Well, obviously it's a dream come true, right? I think you hit the nail on the head there. There's 32 of these jobs, so it's definitely not lost on me how fortunate enough the opportunity is to have one of those jobs, a dream come true. When I started, 25 whatever it's been years ago, I wanted to be a scout, and then worked your way up to be an assistant GM, and then the cherry on top of the sundae is you pinch yourself, and every day I get to walk into a rink is a day where I thank the big man upstairs, and I'm very fortunate to do what I do. So, but to do it, on any team in the NHL is a privilege. Obviously, this organization with giants, and Joe Sakic as a player, and then to cut my teeth here working for Joe and working with Joe, and obviously, I was in the early stages of my professional career when the Avs were killing it and back in the day, and Pierre Lacroix was a monster in the business, and his bravery, his the big deals that he made, the guts, just those were things that it made you take notice. When Pierre Lacroix made a move, those were take notice types of moves.
You knew him, you know that family well, and I know, and we'll talk about it in a moment, what he means to you. But do you find yourself maybe channeling him a little bit sometimes in the chair? You want to make your own mark, no question about it, and you have.
I think it's hard, but when you certainly have, you read up on him, you know the work that he did. I wasn't in the Avs organization, obviously, when he's here, but I know the respect and the, that Joe had for him, and you hear the stories, and Craig Billington, who played here and then worked for Pierre, and then obviously Charlotte Graham and all the stories, and you pick their brains on, things that, when you made this deal or that deal, and how you came to those sort of things, and hearing Joe, talk about the dynamics of the behind the scenes of sometimes of the whys, but he made some, obviously the Patty Waugh deals is a huge standout deal, and he just had there was an air, right? Pierre had an air and aura that very few people have. And I think, from somebody who was outside the organization and watching that at the time, you always study the stuff and the deals. And then you hear the people who knew him and the respect that he got and how he treated his staff. I think that's probably as important and impressive as the on ice and the hockey decisions that he made. He had the respect of everybody who worked for him.
Yeah. Kind of a fun question here. The Avs have yet to build a statue of anyone. Who's your number one on that list? Maybe Pierre, maybe Joe?
I think it certainly, you can't go wrong. I think there's a decent amount that could come right after that as well. They've had some tremendous players, and obviously Pierre as a builder is, would be first and foremost. And, Joe's obviously done both. So I think those are hard to think of the Avs logo without thinking of those two gentlemen.
We talk a lot about in hockey the family of it, right, and the brotherhood and the connectivity that is there, and whether you were a part of it for a long time or just a short time, that happens, and that I think is one of the things that I remember most about Pierre when I met him 15 years ago. Instantly, it was like, hey, okay, you're good. You're part of it. You look out for my grandkids. You're one of my son's best friends. Like, do you feel that that's a thing in hockey and a legacy that you've continued here in with the Avs organization? Do you treat it like a family?
I without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the one thing when I came here that, I think Joe, it comes natural to him. But I think obviously Joe played for, Pierre, and Pierre started that. Whether, culture, whatever, that word means different things in a lot of different ways. But I think Pierre firmly entrenched the importance of family and treating people, not only the players and coaches and the locker room, but, his staff would certainly say that was a big thing about him, and I think that's something Joe has in him. But I certainly think he would echo that, Pierre, the way he treated the players, and I think that became part of Joe's fabric too. And I'd like to think that our staff would say the same, and our players would say the same today. It's a family with within your family structure, right? It's your work family, and hopefully we've continued that. That's for sure.
There is not as much history as an original 6 team here, but the Avs have certainly packed a lot into what will be 30 years next year.
Yep.
You are obviously part of that legacy, Stanley Cup champion here. Is there a certain mark you want to be remembered by when this is all said and done for you as GM?
Wow, that's a deep question.
Yeah.
I think, Rudo, to be honest, like, obviously my life has been very blessed as somebody who was not a good player, and who really just wanted to work in the NHL and be a scout, and to get into these positions and with the organizations I've been in, and very blessed. I've got no complaints. I think obviously the Stanley Cup was amazing, but I think at the end of the day, for me, it's going to come down to the relationships I've built in hockey, and whether it's with the coaches and Bedsy and Joe and the players and our staff and our scouts, that whenever 20 years from now or 10 or whenever it is, that if people think of me or hear my name, they'll think fondly and that he was a good dude.
Even at the highest level of the NHL, it's more about the people than the sport.
It might sound cliche, but I don't feel that I've worked. I worked coming out of college in jobs that was miserable at, and when I got my foot in the door at 28 or 29 with the Blue Jackets, I've been very blessed and haven't felt like I've worked. And we've had some tough days and tough seasons and a tough second year here. And it was tough, but I can honestly say it's never a bad day. And I think that's a thing that Joe would echo. Joe was the same that year. We had 46 points as the year we were fortunate to win the Stanley Cup. And I think that's something that sticks with you, and you don't have to be a miserable, person. Losing's terrible, and it hurts, it permeates, you feel it. But, I think that's a leadership style that I think Joe brings, and we're going to be all right no matter what. And I think that's hopefully something that I also can bring, because it's not always going to be sunshine and roses. And if you want to stay in this business, there's going to be a time 5 or 6 years from now, 7, 8, whatever it is, where there's, the superstars are not going to be here. So enjoy it while you can, and then hopefully be able to rebuild it back up.
Pierre talked about that a lot, the highs and the lows of a pressure position like the GM. I mean, it's just, that's a hockey season. But, I think the one thing that always stuck with me that Pierre would talk about is that you just have to make sure that everybody around you is okay, and that your highs outweigh the lows, and always just finding a way to get to that point. Even if you're in that dip, and even if it seems like the world is coming down on your head, you just got to do one thing, make one move, make one decision to sort of kind of change that trajectory.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, like, those were coming out of that, surviving that really rough year, and ownership continuing to show faith, and obviously Joe, I mean, he's a legend, but us, our staff and stuff, it means a lot. And I think, our ownership has been incredible throughout that process. And I'm sure Pierre, was in his time, and when you go through the tough times, but it's not, when you're building and you've got cap space and you've got draft picks, it's a different kind of fun.
Yeah.
As opposed to, the last few years where we've got to really be creative, and we're, whether it's injuries or, things, that's hockey, and you're limited, and you can't get involved in certain things, and it's frustrating, but it's just different, right? You're an established team, you're at a different part of your cycle, but coming out of the 46-point season, we're swimming in cap space, we've got picks, we're starting a prospect pool. Now you've got to use those wisely, right? And you can go get a Devon Taves, you can get a Burakovsky, you can get involved in Kadri. Like, it's just different, right? So but both are incredible, and it's fun.
You have stewarded this organization to a really impressive spot. I my first year, obviously covering you guys day in and day out, but watching it from afar for a long time. Not just saying it because this is what we're talking about, but it is very Pierre-esque in the way that you're handling things, and I can see the way you treat the staff, and that room is a very good room, and I think just from me to you have a lot to do with that.
I appreciate that. I mean, you're being very kind. I think
Also honest though.
Well, that's good. But I mean, like I said, Joe, I'm sure pick up things from the people you work with, right? And and hearing the stories again about Pierre and how respected he was by his staff, and obviously Joe commands that respect in ways that not many others can. But I think for me, I got to be myself.
Yeah.
I fall in love with my players. I fall in love with my staff. You want everyone to have success. And, Pierre was a big presence, right? Like he can command a room just from when I watched him from afar, and very comfortable in doing the camera and the media. I'm not really that. I'm certainly not that presence, but I am comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah.
But there are things that you can admire, and the one thing I know is that he was a good person, and I think that's the thing that carries forward in his passion for hockey. And I think that's the one thing that if you're working in hockey, you're passionate and you're fortunate. And I think that's maybe the commonalities of things. He certainly was a giant. And if I can just treat the staff and have that kind of respect, then I'm doing okay.
You've already got one cup in the bag.
I'd say you're doing pretty good.
Between you and Pierre, the Avs are the blessed ones, I think, to have you two at the top of the organization.
Well,
so
Pierre and Joe, and there's a line in our ownership, and I love my time in Columbus. They treated me awesome, but it was a very much a blessing to, if I had to leave, to come here at that time was a really good opportunity, and it's worked out extremely well for me. So
I just have one more for you, and then we'll let you go. You obviously have a very important, busy job, but
not really. I'm just going to go have a coffee and work out.
I'm not sure Pierre ever worked out, so you got that on him too. But do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite memory or personal story with him that you would care to share, if at all?
The only thing that,
or story you heard maybe, or
like there's a lot of stories. Some I probably can't tell, but honestly, I think the thing that I was very, I was younger when those guys when they moved to Colorado, when they were a giant in the league. We were just starting out. And again, some of the big deals that he made, like he was not gun shy, right? Whether it's, Matt Sundin and, Patrick Waugh. Like if there was the one thing about Pierre, if there was a premier guy or someone that he felt the team needed, there was no, like, I can imagine him. There's no second guessing. He's just, I'm getting him. I don't, it doesn't matter.
No.
Like that type of bravado, that type of confidence, tenacity is something that I think it's not always easy to have, right? You look at it, you can overthink things, and you got to have a strong staff, around you. But I think Pierre had that sort of that feel, and if he wanted something, he was either going to get it done or die trying, and I think that's something that I certainly, as a young guy starting out, was like something different about this cat.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're good. The Chris MacFarland, GM of the Avs, one more time, thank you for coming on. We appreciate you so much. Yep. This has been DNVR for Gizmo. I'm Rudo, and we'll catch you in the rest of the show.
All right, talking about the legacy of Pierre Lacroix with a man who knows him very well and certainly has had an influence, president of the Colorado Avalanche, Joe Sakic. Joe, we talk about Pierre, and you knew him better than I did, but I think when we think about what the legacy of Pierre was, it wasn't just the moves that he maybe made on the ice, but it was the impact he had on people, staff, players. It became a huge family for him.
It really did. I mean, and that's what he said right when he took over in Quebec, that he wanted a family atmosphere, family environment. Yes, he had to make tough decisions, and some decisions hurt him, but he still did it because he had the motto, like, as a general manager and then president, it's what's best for the logo. He'd always say that. So
Pierreism.
But he cared about his players. He cared about the families, and he really wanted. He always felt that the closer your group was, the better chemistry you had, the better chance you had of when you have your ups and downs and you have your downs, the closer your group is, the quicker they'll get out of that situation. And he was a remarkable man.
When you think about maybe the impact that he had on you, and everybody does it their own way. Nobody's trying to be Pierre, but there's always influences and hints of it. What do you think the biggest thing you took away from him was that you sort of apply to your role now?
Yeah, I think the one thing, well, two things. One, if you believe in something, if you do what your gut tells you, and don't worry about anything else. Are you going to make mistakes? Sure. Yeah, you're going to make mistakes, but if you have a conviction and you strongly believe in it, just do it. And that was one of them. And also, I think what he was really good at, nothing ever came out. Mm-hmm. I know what happened in these offices stayed in these offices. Yeah. And and it's because he didn't want the players to hear anything. Right. He didn't want it to get out and have a player's feelings get hurt. There's nothing worse than hearing your name in trade talks around the league.
Sure, sure.
It's especially for your family, more so for the family than the player. So he did. He was everything was tight to the vest, and I learned that, and I appreciated that, because I think we're in this position. But as players, you appreciate you appreciate just the secrecy of what he was doing, and I thought it worked.
It goes back to that family aspect of it for sure for him. Yeah. He always used to tell me how tight of a ship he ran, and that he was this very effervescent, very caring, loving man. If you've ever met him, I mean, he's a giant teddy bear. You could meet him for the first time or the 100th time, and you walk into the room, and you're the most important person in the room, even though he had the room. But he said he ran a tight ship. He said he kept it pretty. He was business when it was business.
He was business, but yeah, he was.
Yeah.
But he had fun when it was time to have fun as well. I mean, he'd play games. If we got stuck somewhere because of whatever, our charter was late, we'd end up going for dinner, and he'd be in there playing cards and having fun with the guys. But it is funny how he can be up there very emotional during a game. All right, some people are more emotional than others. He's probably at the top when it came to that being emotional and all the little things, and if he saw something wrong, not necessarily with his players, but just in a game or calls or whatever, and he wouldn't be a happy man. He'd snap up there.
Oh yeah.
But it's funny how as soon as the game would end and he'd come down, and he'd go down by the wives' room, and none of the wives, none of the kids, no one knew that, because he'd come down and he was just like nothing. He forgot about the game, and right there he's awesome. He was amazing with the families, and just that I don't think any of them saw that side of him. And to be honest with you, I really didn't.
Yeah.
As a player, I mean, by the time he'd come down to the dressing room or wherever, he'd find a way to let it go. But the league offices, they'd hear about it. They would tell me, the guys at the office would tell me his phone calls, and it was nothing like what we heard. So it was, but he protected his players. He protected the team, protected the logo.
Protect another Pierreism. Yeah. We talk about those a lot all the time. I definitely Pierre Lacroix, not a guy I would want mad at me at any moment, especially if I was working for him. No. but also a guy that I would kill to work for. So
100%.
If you had,
you trust him.
100%. Yeah.
And that was it. Everything was about trust.
Yeah. And love, and you knew, and he says your family. You know your family. You call that guy, he'll come running.
He would.
Do you have, and we'll just keep you for another minute or so here, but do you have a favorite memory, like one thing that like maybe still continues to come up, or, you know, is there one thing that he maybe said to you, or one moment that you might have had that maybe kind of stands out in your mind, Joe?
I don't know if there's just one thing that stands out. Just Pierre in general. I mean, just the relationship I had with him. We had a great relationship. It was based on trust and respect. And you know, I just really appreciated when I did retire. And but the one thing is when I retired, I knew I was going to retire.
Yeah.
And we waited. And Pierre just had surgery on his knee, so he couldn't walk. So we're discussing when we wanted to announce it. And he's all right, well, we got to announce it. And he couldn't walk. So I said, Pierre, it's okay. You know that I'm retiring. No one else has to know. We'll wait until you're healthy, and then we'll announce it. He said, yeah, perfect. But really, a couple of years after my retirement, he asked me to come to a board of governors meeting with him, and you know, he's at the time I didn't know what he was doing, but you know. But being Pierre, he knew what he was doing, and he just wanted to get me involved. And I think he was, he wanted me to be part of the organization, and him to kind of groom me and show me the way. And I really appreciated that, because I had no intention of doing this until he brought me in, and then you know, we had that great relationship in the office, which I never had as a player. So it was great.
When he sets his mind to something, he gets his way.
Yeah.
C-Mac was talking about that earlier, and I'm sure he had it already visioned for you.
Yeah,
and
he did.
This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Pierre doesn't talk about too many people lovingly, but obviously you and I have gotten to know each other, but he always spoke just extraordinary highly of you, and I know you know that. But
yeah.
Last one for you, the Hall of Fame ceremony, that was a little bit long coming. Obviously, lots of people wanted to get him in a little earlier, and certainly would have been great if he would have been there in person for it. But what an emotional time that was for you all. I hated not being there, but the speech his grandson Max gave, and just the emotions and having you there, it had to have been just you've had some incredible moments in your career, but that had to have been like, oh my gosh.
It was amazing. Deb and I went there, and we had a great time with his entire family.
Yeah.
And it is too bad that he wasn't there for that. I mean, he would have been so proud. And I'm sure he was looking down, and he was proud. He was proud, especially of Max's speech. What an incredible speech! A young man on stage like that. I mean, that's cool to do. And he was great. But it really, just to be with the entire family that weekend. I mean, it was a special moment.
Yeah. Joe, thank you so much for the time. Thanks for helping us carry on the legacy, and thanks for doing that here in this organization. You've done a wonderful job, and you're definitely the right guy.
I appreciate it. Just follow Pierre, his footsteps.
Pierre Lacroix, one of the greats, forever and always.